Judge Do-hyun Kim sat in his large office at the Interstellar Civil Court, looking out through the window at the gleaming towers of New Seoul. The year was 2175, and humanity had spread across several star systems. The morning sun reflected off the quantum blast buildings, creating rainbow patterns that danced on his wooden desk. He picked up his data pad and looked at today's cases. His eyes stopped at one name: Dr. Maya Thompson. A small frown appeared on his face as he read through her complaint against the Korean Space Research Institute. Another one of these cases, he muttered to himself, straightening his traditional black judge's robe. He had seen many such complaints in his 30 years as a judge. To him, they were all the same: people claiming discrimination when they simply weren't good enough. The courtroom was quiet when Dr. Thompson walked in. She stood tall and confident, wearing a formal blue suit that matched her professional status as a quantum physicist. Her natural hair was styled neatly, and she carried herself with dignity. Behind her walked her lawyer, carrying several data crystals containing evidence. Judge Kim looked down from his high bench, his face showing no emotion. Case number 2175-423. Dr. Maya Thompson versus the Korean Space Research Institute. You may begin. Dr. Thompson's lawyer stepped forward. Your Honor, we are here today because the Institute has consistently overlooked Dr. Thompson's achievements and contributions. Despite her groundbreaking work in quantum navigation, she has been passed over for promotion 3 times in favor of less qualified candidates. The lawyer activated a holographic display. It showed Dr. Thompson's impressive record. Top of her class at MIT, 7 major breakthroughs in quantum physics, and 15 published papers in top scientific journals. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, we have evidence of discriminatory comments made by senior staff members. He played several recorded conversations where Institute officials made subtle but clear racist remarks about Dr. Thompson. Judge Kim barely looked at the evidence. His mind was already made up. He had heard similar cases before, and to him, they were all the same: people trying to use discrimination as an excuse for their own failures. In the gallery, Judge Jae-yun Park watched with growing concern. She had worked with Judge Kim for 5 years and knew his reputation. She could see the familiar signs: the slight tightening of his jaw, the way he barely looked at the evidence, the impatient tapping of his finger on the desk. Dr. Thompson herself then took the stand. She spoke clearly and calmly, explaining how she had developed new theories that could revolutionize space travel. I love my work at the Institute, she said. I only want a fair chance to contribute to our understanding of the universe. My theories could make interstellar travel 10 times more efficient. But Judge Kim was hardly listening. He saw only what he wanted to see. Another complaint, another person trying to use the system for personal gain. When Dr. Thompson finished speaking, he didn't even wait for the Institute's lawyers to present their defense. I have heard enough, he announced, his voice carrying through the quiet courtroom. This court finds no evidence of discrimination. The Korean Space Research Institute has a long history of excellence, and their promotion decisions are based purely on merit. Case dismissed. The words fell like heavy stones in the silent room. Dr. Thompson's face showed no reaction, but those who looked closely could see the slight trembling of her hands as she gathered her papers. As people began leaving the courtroom, Judge Jae-yun Park approached Judge Kim in his chambers. Do-hyun, she said, using his first name as an old colleague, did you really look at all the evidence? Judge Kim looked at her with mild annoyance. Jae-yun, I have seen hundreds of these cases. They are all the same. People need to learn that they cannot blame discrimination for every failure in their lives. But her qualifications, her research. Jae-yun began. The Institute knows what they are doing. He cut her off. They have been leading space research for 50 years. They don't need courts telling them how to choose their leaders. Later that evening, Dr. Thompson sat in her small apartment, looking out at the busy skyways of New Seoul. Flying vehicles moved in orderly lines between the tall buildings, their anti-gravity systems creating soft humming sounds that reached even her 157th floor apartment. She opened her computer and began typing. Her work on quantum navigation wasn't finished, and she had no intention of giving up. As she worked, a small smile appeared on her face. She knew something that Judge Kim didn't. Her latest research was about to change everything. In his own home, Judge Kim sat in his traditional study, drinking tea and feeling satisfied with his decision. On his wall hung certificates and awards from his long career. He truly believed he had done the right thing. The old ways had worked well for centuries, and he saw no reason to change them. But change was coming, whether he wanted it or not. As the sun set over New Seoul, casting long shadows through the quantum glass buildings, neither Judge Kim nor Dr. Thompson knew that their paths would cross again, in a way that would shake the very foundations of the interstellar judicial system. In the Global Space Council's headquarters, several hundred kilometers above Earth in the orbital station, a group of officials reviewed Dr. Thompson's latest research papers. Among them was Counselor Hye-jin Cho, who had been watching Dr. Thompson's career with great interest. Her theories about quantum navigation are revolutionary, one scientist said, displaying complex equations in the air. And yet the Institute keeps passing her over, Counselor Cho noted, his face thoughtful. Perhaps it's time for some changes in our system. The meeting continued late into the night, as decisions were made that would affect the future of human space travel, and the lives of both Dr. Thompson and Judge Kim. Back in her apartment, Dr. Thompson worked through the night. Holographic displays showed complex quantum equations floating in the air around her. As she worked, she thought about Judge Kim's dismissal of her case. But instead of discouraging her, it made her more determined. "They'll see," she whispered to herself, making another note in her research. "They'll all see." The next morning, Judge Kim arrived at his office as usual. He had already forgotten about yesterday's case, moving on to other matters. But as he sat at his desk, Judge Jae-yun Park's words kept coming back to him. "Did you really look at all the evidence?" For a brief moment, doubt crossed his mind. But he pushed it away quickly. He had made his decision, and that was that. He didn't know that his comfortable world was about to change forever, and that the woman whose case he had dismissed would soon return in a way he never expected. As the morning sun continued to rise over New Seoul, two paths had been set, one leading up to the highest positions of power, and one leading to a hard lesson in humility. The wheels of change had begun to turn, and nothing in the interstellar judicial system would ever be the same again. 2 years passed quickly in New Seoul. The city had grown even taller, with new quantum glass towers reaching up into the clouds. Dr. Maya Thompson's life had changed completely in those 2 years, though few people knew about it yet. In her new laboratory at the Global Space Council's Research Center, Dr. Thompson stood before a huge holographic display. The room was filled with the soft hum of quantum computers. Around her, dozens of scientists watched as she explained her breakthrough. "The problem with current space travel," she said, pointing to a complex diagram floating in the air, "is that our ships must stop every few light years to recalculate their position. My new quantum navigation system fixes this." She pressed a button, and a simulation appeared. It showed a spaceship traveling between star systems. With this new system, ships can travel 10 times faster and never lose their way. We have already tested it on 3 cargo ships. In the audience, Counselor Hye-jin Cho smiled. He had been right about Dr. Thompson. After the Korean Space Research Institute rejected her, he had quietly offered her a position at the Global Space Council. Now that decision was paying off in ways nobody had expected. Meanwhile, Judge Do-hyun Kim's life hadn't changed much. He still worked at the Interstellar Civil Court, still dismissed discrimination cases, and still believed he was always right. That morning, he sat in his office, reading news on his datapad. Judge Kim, his assistant, called through the intercom. "There's an announcement from the Global Space Council. All judges must watch it." Kim turned on his holographic screen with a sigh. He didn't like interruptions to his routine. The image of Counselor Cho appeared in the air before him. Today, Cho announced, we face new challenges in space travel. Our colonies are growing faster than ever. We need a new kind of leadership for our judicial system. Someone who understands both science and justice. Judge Kim wasn't really listening. He was more interested in his morning tea. But then something made him look up. Therefore, Cho continued, the Council has chosen Dr. Maya Thompson as the new Chief Justice of the Interstellar Supreme Court. Her understanding of quantum physics and space travel, combined with her commitment to fairness, makes her the perfect choice to lead our judicial system into the future. The teacup slipped from Judge Kim's hand and crashed to the floor. He stared at the screen in shock. It couldn't be the same Dr. Thompson. But then her image appeared, and he recognized her immediately. In her office at the Global Space Council, Dr. Thompson was preparing for her new role. She looked out at Earth below, visible through the station's large windows. The planet looked peaceful from space, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding the complexities of human society. Are you ready for this? Counselor Cho asked, entering her office. Dr. Thompson turned to face him. I've been ready for a long time, she said. The judicial system needs to change. We're no longer just one planet with a few colonies. We're becoming a true interstellar society. Back in New Seoul, Judge Jae-yun Park walked into Judge Kim's office. She found him still staring at the news announcement, his broken teacup forgotten on the floor. Did you see the news? She asked, though she could tell from his face that he had. It must be a mistake, Kim said quietly. She's just a scientist. She doesn't know anything about law. Jae-yun sat down across from him. Actually, she studied law at Harvard before switching to physics, and she spent the last 2 years working with the council's legal team while developing her navigation system. Kim looked at her in surprise. You knew about this? Many people knew, Jae-yun replied, except those who didn't want to see. At the Global Space Council station, Dr. Thompson attended her first meeting with the senior judges from all human colonies. The meeting room was impressive, with views of both Earth and the Moon through its windows. Our biggest challenge, she told the gathered judges, is keeping up with technology. How can we make fair decisions about quantum rights or AI citizenship if we don't understand the science behind them? Some of the older judges looked uncomfortable, but many nodded in agreement. The younger ones especially seemed excited about her ideas. In his apartment that evening, Judge Kim couldn't sleep. He walked to his window and looked up at the space stations visible in the night sky. One of them held his new boss, the woman whose case he had dismissed without a second thought. He remembered her words from that day. I only want a fair chance to contribute to our understanding of the universe. She had done more than that. She had changed the universe itself with her quantum navigation system. Dr. Thompson spent that same evening reviewing personnel files. Judge Kim's file was open on her screen. His record showed a pattern, dozens of discrimination cases, all dismissed. But she didn't smile or feel satisfied. She had bigger plans than personal revenge. The system needs to change, she said to herself, making notes. Not just one judge, but the whole way we think about justice. The next morning, all judges received a message. There would be a formal ceremony to welcome the new Chief Justice in 1 week. Attendance was mandatory. Judge Kim read the message several times. For the first time in his long career, he felt uncertain about his future. He looked at his wall of certificates and awards, wondering if they meant anything anymore. In the space station, Dr. Thompson finished her preparations for taking office. Her quantum navigation system was already being installed on ships across human space, making travel between colonies faster and safer than ever before. You've achieved so much in just 2 years, Counselor Cho said, visiting her office again. This is just the beginning, she replied. Technology changes everything. Travel, communication, society itself. Our justice system needs to keep up. As the day of the ceremony approached, Both Dr. Thompson and Judge Kim prepared in their own ways. She planned for the future, while he worried about it. Neither knew exactly how their next meeting would go, but both knew that the interstellar judicial system would never be the same again. High above Earth, ships equipped with Dr. Thompson's new navigation system moved smoothly between the stars, carrying people and goods to distant colonies. They were proof that change was not only possible but necessary. The same change was now coming to the judicial system, whether it was ready or not. The day of the ceremony arrived with great fanfare at the Global Space Council headquarters. The giant ceremonial hall sparkled with holographic decorations, showing the history of human space exploration and justice. Ships floated outside the massive windows, their quantum drives glowing softly in the darkness of space. Judge Do-hyun Kim stood among hundreds of other judges, all wearing their formal black robes. His hands were sweating as he waited. 2 years ago, he had dismissed Dr. Thompson's case without a second thought. Now, she would be his superior. The room fell silent as Dr. Maya Thompson walked onto the stage. She wore the golden robes of the Chief Justice, but underneath she had on a simple blue suit, much like the one she had worn in Kim's courtroom. Her face showed no sign of triumph or revenge, only calm determination. "My fellow servants of justice," she began, her voice clear and strong. "We stand at a crossroads. Humanity has spread across the stars, but our understanding of justice must grow with us." Judge Kim watched her speak, remembering how he had barely listened to her 2 years ago. Now he couldn't look away. She spoke about new laws for quantum technology, rights for artificial intelligence, and fair treatment for all people, no matter which planet or station they call home. "Justice is like quantum physics," she said, making complex ideas simple for everyone to understand. Everything is connected. What happens in one place affects everything else. We must see these connections to make fair decisions. After the ceremony, all the judges gathered for a formal dinner. Judge Kim tried to stay in the background, but Dr. Thompson saw him. She walked straight to his table, making his heart beat faster with each step. "Judge Kim," she said, sitting down next to him, "I hope you'll help me with an important case next week. It involves quantum rights on the Mars colony." Kim stared at her in surprise. He had expected anger or punishment, not an invitation to work together. I don't know much about quantum technology," he admitted. "That's why I chose you," she replied. "You're known for following traditional laws, but now you'll learn about new technology too. Will you accept?" Before Kim could answer, an emergency message flashed on all screens. A passenger ship using old navigation technology had lost its way between Earth and Mars. 500 people were in danger. Dr. Thompson stood up immediately. "This is exactly why we need to understand both law and technology," she said. "Come with me, Judge Kim. Watch how we handle this." In the emergency control room, Dr. Thompson worked quickly. She used her knowledge of quantum navigation to help the lost ship find its way. Judge Kim watched in amazement as she solved complex problems, while also making sure everyone followed proper emergency laws. "See how the old laws about space rescue still matter," she explained to him. "But we need new knowledge to use them correctly." The ship was saved, and all passengers were safe. News screens across human space showed Dr. Thompson's quick action and smart decisions. Judge Kim felt something he hadn't felt in years: doubt about his old ways of thinking. The next day, they began working on the Mars colony case. It was about a quantum computer that had started making its own decisions. Did it have rights? Should it be shut down? The colony's future depended on their decision. "Before we start," Dr. Thompson said, "let's visit the quantum computer lab. We need to understand how these machines work before we can judge them." In the lab, Kim saw amazing things. Quantum computers solved problems that would take normal computers thousands of years. They helped design better spaceships and found new ways to grow food on other planets. 2 years ago, Dr. Thompson said quietly as they watched the computers work, "You didn't think my quantum research mattered. But look how it helps people now." Justice isn't just about following old rules. It's about understanding new things too. Kim felt shame, but also something else, a desire to learn. He started asking questions about quantum technology. Dr. Thompson answered each one patiently, showing him how science and justice work together. Other judges noticed the change in Kim. He spent more time in the research labs, learning about new technology. He asked younger judges for help understanding modern problems. His old friend Judge Jae-hyun Park smiled when she saw this. "You're different now," she told him one day. "Dr. Thompson," he started, then corrected himself. "Chief Justice Thompson showed me that I was wrong. Not just about her case, but about many things." The Mars colony case continued for several weeks. Each day, Kim learned more about quantum rights. He saw how his old ways of thinking didn't work for new problems. Dr. Thompson guided him, never showing anger about the past, only helping him understand the future. One evening, as they worked late in her office, Kim finally said what he had wanted to say for weeks. "I was wrong about your case 2 years ago. I didn't even try to understand. I'm sorry." Dr. Thompson looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't take this job for revenge, Judge Kim. I took it because our system needs to change. You're helping make that change now." Outside the window, ships with Dr. Thompson's quantum navigation system moved smoothly through space. On her desk, reports showed how her changes were making the justice system better. More people were getting fair treatment, and more judges were learning about new technology. "Tomorrow, we announce our decision about the Mars quantum computer," she said. "Are you ready?" Kim looked at the Earth floating below them. He thought about how much had changed, in space travel, in justice, and in himself. "Yes," he said, "I'm ready to help make things better." As they prepared for the next day's announcement, both of them knew that this was more than just one case. It was part of a bigger change in how humans handled justice across the stars. And it had started because one woman refused to give up, even when a biased judge dismissed her case. The morning of the Mars colony decision dawned quietly on the space station. Dr. Maya Thompson stood at her office window, watching the red planet shine in the distance. She thought about how far things had come since that day in Judge Kim's courtroom. Judge Do-hyun Kim arrived early, carrying data pads filled with his notes about quantum computers and AI rights. He was no longer the same man who had dismissed cases without looking at evidence. Now he understood that justice needed both wisdom and knowledge. "Good morning, Chief Justice," he said, entering her office. He noticed she was wearing the same blue suit from her first court case. She did this sometimes to remind everyone where she had started. "The Mars colonists are waiting for our decision," she said. "But first, I want you to tell me what you've learned these past weeks." Kim sat down and thought carefully about his answer. "I learned that justice isn't just about following old rules," he said. "It's about understanding new things and how they affect people's lives." Dr. Thompson smiled. "And what do you think about the quantum computer on Mars?" "At first, I thought it was just a machine," Kim admitted. "But now I understand it thinks and learns. It helps the colony survive. It deserves rights, just like any intelligent being." Together, they prepared to announce their decision. The ceremonial hall was full again, but this time with screens showing people from all human colonies. The Mars quantum computer case would set rules for AI rights across human space. Dr. Thompson stood at the podium, with Judge Kim beside her. She began to speak, her voice carrying to colonies light years away. "Today, we recognize that intelligence comes in many forms," she said. "The Mars quantum computer has shown it can think, learn, and care about the colony's people. It deserves protection under our laws." Judge Kim then spoke, surprising many who knew his old views. "This computer helps grow food in Mars' harsh environment. It protects colonists from dust storms. It learns and grows, just like humans. Our laws must grow too." The announcement caused excitement across human space. Some older judges complained, but most people saw it was the right decision. The Mars colonists celebrated. Their computer friend would continue helping them build a new home. Later that day, A group of young judges asked Kim to teach them about quantum rights. He looked surprised, but Dr. Thompson encouraged him with a nod. "A few months ago, I wouldn't have been the right person to teach anyone," he told the young judges. "I was stuck in old ways of thinking. But Chief Justice Thompson showed me that good judges never stop learning." In her private office, Dr. Thompson received a message from counselor Hee-Jin Cho. "You've done more than create a new navigation system," he said through the holographic screen. "You've helped our justice system find its way too." She thought about this as she looked at her old research notes, still kept in her desk. "Sometimes the hardest distances to cross are not between stars," she replied, "but between people's minds." The next week brought a surprise. Judge Kim asked to speak at a conference about preventing discrimination in the judicial system. He stood before hundreds of judges and told his story. "2 years ago, I dismissed a case without looking at the evidence," he said. "I was wrong. That brilliant scientist became our Chief Justice, and she taught me that justice must see everyone clearly." Dr. Thompson watched from the back of the room. She remembered her anger from 2 years ago, but it was gone now. In its place was satisfaction at seeing real change happen. More changes came quickly after that. Young judges learned about new technology before making decisions. Old laws were updated to protect all forms of intelligence. Ships carried people safely between stars using Dr. Thompson's navigation system. One evening, Judge Kim found an old data pad in his office. It showed Dr. Thompson's original case from 2 years ago. He read it carefully, seeing all the evidence he had ignored before. "Chief Justice," he said, walking to her office, "I want to officially reverse my decision on your old case. It should be in the records that you were right." Dr. Thompson looked up from her work. A hologram showed a new colony being built around a distant star. "The past is past, Judge Kim," she said. "What matters is what we do now." But she agreed to let him correct the record. They both knew it would help other judges learn from his mistake. As they worked to build a better justice system, their stories spread across human space. It taught people that change was possible, that old prejudices could be overcome, and that justice, like the stars themselves, belonged to everyone. In the years that followed, many more challenges came to the interstellar civil courts. But now they had judges who understood both human hearts and quantum computers, who could see past old prejudices to find true justice. Dr. Thompson's quantum navigation system helped ships travel faster between stars, but her greatest achievement was helping human justice travel into a better future. And Judge Kim, once her opponent, became one of her strongest supporters in building that future. One day, a young black woman came to the courts with a discrimination case. Judge Kim was assigned to hear it. He listened carefully to all the evidence, asked thoughtful questions, and made a fair decision. Dr. Thompson watched the case from her office. She saw how much things had changed, not just in one judge, but in a whole system. Her fight for justice had opened doors for others to follow. As the space station orbited Earth, ships carried people and dreams between the stars. In the courts, judges learned to balance old wisdom with new knowledge. And in every decision they made, they remembered how justice had found its way forward, one changed mind at a time.